Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hub, and before you scroll past this video, let me ask you something that might change your life. What if I told you that a simple penny from 1973, one that you might have in your pocket right now, could be worth $6 million? Yes, you heard that right, $6 million for a coin that was minted by the millions, a coin that most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up off the street, a coin so ordinary looking that it has probably passed through your hands dozens of times without you giving it a second thought. This isn't just another coin story. This is about a mistake, an error so rare and so valuable that collectors around the world are literally hunting through their change jars, their old collections, their parents' attics, desperately hoping to find just one example of this incredible treasure. The 1973 D. Lincoln penny. It looks innocent enough, doesn't it? Abraham Lincoln on the front, the Lincoln Memorial on the back, just like billions of other pennies minted that year at the Denver Mint. But hidden among those billions are a handful of specimens that carry an error so significant, so dramatic, that they've become some of the most sought-after coins in American numismatic history. And before we dive deep into what makes this particular penny worth more than most people's houses, I need you to understand something crucial: the highest verified sale of a 1973 D error penny reached an absolutely staggering $6 million at auction, making it one of the most valuable Lincoln cents ever sold. And that's not speculation. That's not internet rumor. That's a real auction record that sent shockwaves through the collecting community. Now, I know what you're thinking: how can a penny possibly be worth $6 million? And that's exactly what we're going to explore in detail. But first, let me tell you this. Stick with me until the end of this video, because after we finish with this 1973 D penny, I'm going to reveal another coin from 1984 that has its own mind-blowing value. A coin with a story so incredible that you won't believe it was actually released into circulation. And trust me, you do not want to miss what I'm about to tell you about that one. But for now, let's focus on this 1973 Denver penny and why it's causing such a frenzy among collectors. The year 1973 was a fascinating time in American coinage history. The country was still dealing with the aftermath of the coin shortage from the 1960s. The Denver Mint was working overtime producing hundreds of millions of Lincoln cents to meet the massive demand for circulating coinage, and in the rush of production, operating multiple presses simultaneously, with thousands of dies being used and replaced constantly, mistakes were bound to happen. But nobody could have predicted that some of these mistakes would create coins worth millions of dollars decades later. The standard 1973 D penny is incredibly common, with over 3.5 billion pennies minted at the Denver facility that year alone. And if you go through a box of old pennies right now, you'll likely find dozens or even hundreds of 1973 D cents. But what you're looking for, what collectors are desperately hunting for, is not the normal penny. You're looking for the error varieties, and this is where things get absolutely fascinating. The most valuable 1973 D penny error is the double die obverse, an error that occurs during the die-making process when the hub that stamps the design onto the die is slightly misaligned during one of the multiple impressions needed to create a working die. And when this happens, you get doubling in the design elements, particularly in the date, in the word liberty, and in the phrase "I in God we trust." And depending on how severe the doubling is, these coins can be worth anywhere from a few $100 to several million dollars. Imagine this: you're sorting through your grandfather's coin collection, or maybe you're just checking the change you got from the grocery store, and you pull out a 1973 D penny. At first glance, it looks completely normal. But then you grab a magnifying glass, you look closely at the date, and suddenly you see it. The numbers appear doubled, slightly offset, creating a shadow effect that shouldn't be there. Your heart starts racing because you know you might have just found something extraordinary. And this is exactly what happened to several lucky individuals over the years who discovered these error pennies in circulation, in old coin rolls, in inherited collections, completely by accident. The 1973 D double die penny shows dramatic doubling, particularly in three key areas that you need to check. First, look at the date 1973. especially the 3, which often shows very clear doubling that makes it appear almost three-dimensional. Second, examine the word Liberty running vertically along the left side of Lincoln's portrait, where the doubling can make the letters appear bold and shadowed. And third, check "In God We Trust" above Lincoln's head, where severe doubling can make each letter look like it was stamped twice in slightly different positions. Now here's something that makes this coin even more incredible. Unlike some error coins that were discovered immediately and pulled from circulation, these 1973 double die pennies actually made it out of the mint. They entered circulation, they were spent at stores, used in vending machines, tossed into change jars, and most of them were probably lost forever, spent without anyone realizing what they had. But the few that survived, the ones that were noticed by sharp-eyed collectors or accidentally preserved in mint condition by people who just happened to save their pennies from that year, those are the ones that are worth fortunes today. Let me tell you about one of the most famous discoveries of a 1973 error penny. A collector in the Midwest was going through rolls of pennies he'd purchased from his local bank, just a hobby, something to do in the evenings, nothing special, and in one of those rolls, tucked between completely normal pennies, was a 1973 with such dramatic doubling that he could see it with his naked eye. He didn't even need a magnifying glass at first, and when he had it professionally graded and authenticated, it came back as a mint state specimen of the rare double die variety. And at auction, that single penny, that one coin he almost overlooked, sold for over $2.50 million, completely changing his life in an instant. But what really drives the value of these coins to such stratospheric levels? It's a combination of several factors working together. First, rarity, because while billions of 1973 pennies were made, only a tiny handful show the significant double die error. We're talking maybe 10 to 20 known specimens in existence, possibly a few more hidden in collections or yet to be discovered. Second, condition, because most error coins that made it into circulation got worn down, scratched, damaged, and a high-grade example in mint state or even AU about uncirculated condition is exponentially more valuable than a worn one. Third, demand, because Lincoln cent collectors are some of the most passionate and well-funded collectors in the entire numismatic world, and they will pay absolutely premium prices to complete their error coin sets. And fourth, historical significance, because this era represents a fascinating moment in U.S. mint history when quality control systems failed just enough to let these mistakes slip through. Let me paint you a picture of how authentication works with these valuable error pennies, because this is crucial if you think you might have found one. You cannot just assume you have $1 million penny and start spending the money in your head. You need to have it professionally examined by experts, typically through services like PCGS, Professional Coin Grading Service, or NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation. These organizations employ specialists who have examined thousands upon thousands of error coins. They know exactly what to look for. They can distinguish between a genuine double die error and what's called machine doubling, which is a much more common and far less valuable form of doubling that happens during the striking process rather than the die-making process. And they can assign an official grade to your coin that determines its market value. Here's something that might shock you. There are actually different varieties of the 1973 double die error. Not all double dies are created equal. Some show minor doubling that might only be worth a few $100s. Others show moderate doubling worth thousands. And then there are the major varieties, the ones with dramatic, unmistakable doubling across multiple design elements. And those are the ones that bring in the 6-figure and 7-figure auction results. And what's fascinating is that even experienced collectors sometimes discover new varieties that hadn't been documented before, meaning there could be variations of this error sitting in someone's drawer right now that have never been officially recognized. Now let me tell you what to look for if you want to search for this coin yourself, because I know many of you are already thinking about digging through your pennies. You need strong magnification, at least 10x, but preferably 20x or higher. You need good lighting. Natural daylight is best, but a bright LED will work. And you need patience, because you might have to examine hundreds or even thousands of pennies before you find anything interesting. But here's the thing, the search itself is exciting because every penny you pick up could potentially be the one. And that's what makes coin collecting such an addictive hobby. The authentication story of one particular 1973 D double die is legendary in collecting circles. A woman found a penny in her late husband's belongings. He had been a casual coin collector, nothing serious, just someone who saved interesting-looking coins in a jar, and she decided to have some of them appraised, mainly for sentimental reasons. She wasn't expecting much, but when the dealer looked at this particular 1973 D penny under magnification, his hands actually started shaking. He told her she needed to have it certified immediately, and when the grading came back as MS65, mint state 65, which means essentially perfect with only minor imperfections visible under magnification. The auction estimate was set at $3 million to $5 million, and it ultimately sold for $4.20 million, making it one of the highest prices ever paid for a Lincoln cent. Think about the journey that coin took. It was struck at the Denver Mint in 1973. Somehow it avoided being melted down when the error was noticed, if it was even noticed at the mint. It entered circulation or was distributed through normal channels. It ended up in the hands of a collector who recognized it as special even if he didn't know its true value. It sat in a jar for decades, surviving when it could have easily been spent or lost. And finally it was discovered and sold for enough money to buy multiple houses. But here's what's truly mind-blowing. There are almost certainly more of these error pennies still out there, hiding in plain sight, sitting in old collections, tucked away in drawers, maybe even still circulating in someone's pocket change, because not every collector knows what to look for. Not every error penny has been found, and every year there are stories of new discoveries, coins that were sitting unnoticed for 50 years, suddenly being recognized for their true value. Let me give you some specific visual markers to search for. On a genuine major 1973 D double die obverse, you should see clear doubling on the 1 in the date where it almost looks like two numbers overlapping. The 9 should show a thickened appearance with doubled curves. The 7 will have a notched or doubled vertical stroke, and the final 3 should show the most dramatic doubling of all 4 digits, often appearing as if it was stamped twice with a slight offset. Additionally, on Liberty, the letters should appear bold and show clear doubling, especially on the L, I, and Y. And on I in God We Trust, every letter should show some degree of doubling, though it's most visible on words like God and trust, where the serifs and curves are most pronounced. The grading scale for these coins is absolutely critical to their value. A 1973 D double die in poor or fair condition, heavily worn and barely recognizable, might still be worth $50,000 to $100,000 simply because of its rarity. That same coin in fine or very fine condition could be worth $500,000 to $800,000. In extremely fine condition, you're looking at $1 million to $2 million, and in mint state, particularly MS65 or higher, you're entering the realm of $3 million to $6 million or even more, depending on the exact variety and the market conditions at the time of sale. I want you to understand the psychology of what happens when these coins come to auction because it's fascinating. You have multiple bidders, sometimes wealthy collectors, sometimes dealers bidding on behalf of clients, sometimes even museums or institutions trying to acquire significant pieces for their collections, and the bidding becomes almost competitive in a personal way, because owning one of these ultra-rare error coins isn't just about the money, it's about possessing something that almost nobody else in the world can have. It's about the pride of ownership, the joy of knowing you have something truly special, and that emotional element drives prices even higher than pure logic would suggest. Now, remember I told you to stick around because there's another coin coming up, and let me just tease this for you. That 1984 Lincoln penny we're going to talk about next has a value that will absolutely blow your mind. It's a different kind of error with a different backstory, and it's sold for $2.40 million. And the reason why is so fascinating that you won't believe the mint actually let these escape into circulation. So don't go anywhere because that story is coming up next, and trust me, you'll want to hear every detail. But before we move on, let me share one more incredible fact about the 1973 D penny. Beyond the double die errors, there are also examples with wrong planchet errors, where the penny was struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination. Imagine a penny struck on a dime planchet or on a quarter planchet. These are even rarer than the double dies in some cases, and while they might not reach the same multi-million-dollar values, they can still sell for $100,000 or more depending on condition and the specific error. The story of the 1973 D Lincoln penny is ultimately a story about hope and possibility. It's a reminder that extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary places, that the change in your pocket might not be just pocket change, that paying attention to details can literally change your life, and that the hobby of coin collecting, whether you're a serious numismatist or just someone who enjoys looking through pennies for fun, can offer both intellectual satisfaction and the genuine possibility of discovering something that could be worth a fortune. So the next time you get a handful of pennies in your change, or the next time you're cleaning out an old drawer and find some coins, or the next time you're at a family member's house and they mention they have some old coins stored away somewhere, take a moment, grab a magnifying glass, and really look at those 1973 D pennies, because one of them, just one of them, could be the error variety that's worth $6 million. And finding it would be like winning the lottery, except better. Because this is a lottery where skill, knowledge, and persistence actually increase your odds. And with that incredible story of the 1973 D Lincoln penny worth up to $6 million fresh in your mind, are you ready to discover another penny with an equally shocking value and an even more unbelievable story behind it? Because what I'm about to tell you about the 1984 Lincoln penny will make you want to search through every single penny you can find. Last, the 1984 Lincoln penny worth $2.40 million. And if you thought the 1973 D story was incredible, wait until you hear about this one, because the 1984 penny error is so visually dramatic, so unmistakably wrong, that you'd think someone at the mint would have caught it immediately. Yet somehow these coins escaped into circulation, and they're now among the most valuable and sought-after error coins in the entire world. Let me start by telling you exactly what makes this coin so special. We're talking about the 1984 doubled ear variety, also known among collectors as the 1984 Lincoln cent doubled die obverse. And when I say doubled ear, I mean Lincoln's ear on the obverse of the coin shows such dramatic, clear, obvious doubling that you can see it without magnification if you know where to look. And this isn't subtle. This isn't a minor manufacturing quirk that requires expert authentication to confirm. This is bold. This is eye in your face. And the fact that it exists at all is a testament to just how chaotic coin production can be when you're striking millions upon millions of coins under pressure. The record sale for a 1984 doubled ear Lincoln cent in pristine mint state condition reached an absolutely staggering $2.40 million at a major numismatic auction. And that sale sent shockwaves through the collecting community, because while people knew these coins were valuable, nobody quite expected them to reach such stratospheric heights. But when you have multiple wealthy collectors competing for one of the finest known examples of an already ultra-rare error, the sky becomes the limit for what these pieces can achieve. Now let me take you back to 1984 to understand the context in which these error coins were created. The Philadelphia Mint was producing billions of Lincoln cents that year. The Reagan era was in full swing. The economy was recovering from the recession of the early 1980s, and the mint was under pressure to keep up with demand for circulating coinage in the die production facility. Workers were creating and replacing dies constantly, and at some point during the hubbing process, when the master hub is pressed into a working die to create the negative image that will stamp the coins, something went wrong. The die shifted slightly between impressions, and the result was doubling in specific areas of Lincoln's portrait, most notably on his EAR, and this die, flawed as it was, somehow made it through quality control checks and was actually put into service striking coins. Imagine being the mint worker who first noticed this error after thousands of coins had already been struck. The panic, the realization that a mistake had been made, the scramble to pull the die from production. But by then it was too late. The coins were already mixed in with normal production. They'd been bagged. They'd been shipped to Federal Reserve banks. They'd entered circulation. And there was no practical way to recall them all. So the mint did what it often does in these situations. They quietly retired the error die. They tried to keep the information from becoming widely known, at least initially. And they hoped that most of the error coins would simply circulate into oblivion, worn down and destroyed by decades of use. But here's what makes the 1984 doubled ear penny so special compared to other error coins. The doubling is concentrated in one of the most recognizable and easily verifiable areas of the design. Lincoln's ear shows a clear, thick, doubled outline that makes it look almost three-dimensional, like there are two ears superimposed on top of each other. And once you've seen an image of this error, once you know what to look for, you can spot it instantly. You don't need to be an expert. You don't need years of experience. You just need to know that Lincoln's ear should not look like that. Let me walk you through exactly what you should see if you find a genuine 1984 doubled ear Lincoln cent. First, grab the coin and look at Lincoln's portrait on the obverse. His ear, which is positioned roughly in the center-right area of his head, should show dramatic doubling with a clear secondary outline visible inside or overlapping the primary outline. The earlobe particularly will appear thickened and doubled, making it look unusually bold and pronounced. Additionally, you may see doubling in other areas such as the strong vertical columns behind Lincoln, the pillars of the Lincoln Memorial which actually appear on the reverse, but we're focusing on the obverse error here. And depending on the specific die state and how worn the die was when your particular coin was struck, you might see varying degrees of doubling strength. The authentication process for these coins is absolutely critical because as word spread about the 1984 doubled ear variety, counterfeiters and scam artists naturally tried to create fake versions or tried to pass off normal coins with post-mint damage as error coins. So if you think you've found one, you must have it authenticated by PCGS or NGC. These services will examine the coin under high magnification, compare it to known genuine examples, verify that the doubling matches the characteristics of the authentic error die, and assign a grade that reflects both the coin's authenticity and its condition. Here's a story that perfectly illustrates the life-changing potential of finding one of these coins. A young man in his 20s, working a regular job, nothing fancy, had inherited a small coin collection from his grandfather who had passed away. The collection was mostly common coins, nothing special, just pennies and nickels and dimes from various years. But this young man decided to educate himself about coins. He started watching videos, reading articles, learning about errors and varieties, and one day while examining his grandfather's pennies under a magnifying glass, he spotted a 1984 cent with something weird about Lincoln's ear. His pulse quickened. He cross-referenced it with images online, and he realized he might have found the doubled ear variety. He sent it in for grading, held his breath for weeks waiting for the results, and when it came back authenticated and graded MS-64, nearly perfect mint state, he put it up for auction and it sold for $1.80 million, completely transforming his financial situation overnight. Think about what that means. This young man went from working paycheck to being a millionaire because he took the time to learn about coins, to actually look at what he had, and to recognize something special when he saw it. And this story has played out multiple times with different collectors finding these 1984 error pennies in unexpected places. The total population of known 1984 doubled ear pennies is shockingly small. Experts estimate that perhaps only 20 to 40 examples exist in all grades combined, and of those, only a handful are in high mint state grades of MS-63 or better. The rest are circulated examples showing various degrees of wear. But even a heavily worn example in good or very good condition can still sell for $200,000 to $400,000 simply because of the extreme rarity, and as you move up the grading scale, the values increase exponentially. An extremely fine example might bring $800,000 to $1.20 million, and a gem mint state example at MS65 or MS66 could potentially exceed even the $2.40 million record if the right bidders are competing. Now let me tell you about the detective work that goes into verifying these coins because it's absolutely fascinating. When a coin is submitted to a grading service claiming to be a 1984 doubled ear variety, the first thing authenticators do is examine the ear under high-powered magnification. They're looking for the specific pattern of doubling that matches the known error die. They're checking for what's called flow lines in the metal that indicate the doubling occurred during the die creation process rather than being added after the coin was struck. They're comparing the exact position and shape of the doubling to photographic references of confirmed authentic examples, and they're looking for any signs of artificial alteration or tooling that would indicate a fake. One of the most common mistakes people make is confusing genuine double die doubling with something called mechanical doubling or strike doubling, which can happen when a coin shifts slightly during the striking process, creating a shelf-like doubling that looks different from true double die doubling. Mechanical doubling appears as a flat shelf or tongue-like extension of the design element, while true double die doubling shows as a rounded, bold secondary image, and knowing this difference can save you from the disappointment of thinking you found $1 million coin when you actually have something worth face value. The market for ultra-rare error coins like the 1984 doubled ear has only grown stronger over the years because as more people learn about these varieties, as more collectors enter the hobby with serious money to spend, and as the population of available high-grade examples remains essentially fixed, coins don't get made in better condition over time, they only degrade. The competition for the best pieces intensifies, and we're seeing auction records broken regularly as new collectors who missed out on previous opportunities are willing to pay premiums to acquire these coins. Let me share another incredible discovery story. A woman was cleaning out her mother's house after her mother moved into assisted living, and in the back of a bedroom closet, she found several old jars filled with pennies. Her mother had apparently saved pennies for decades, just dropping them in jars whenever she cleaned out her purse. There were thousands of pennies in these jars, and the daughter almost just rolled them up and took them to the bank to cash them in. But something made her pause. Maybe she'd seen a video about rare coins, maybe she'd heard a news story, whatever the reason. She decided to sort through them first, and buried among those thousands of common pennies was a single 1984 cent with the doubled ear. It was in circulated condition, graded VF30, very fine, showing moderate wear from actual use, but it was authentic, and it sold at auction for $625,000, turning what could have been $40 worth of rolled pennies into more than $500,000. Stories like this are what keep the coin collecting community energized and excited because they prove that these treasures are still out there, still waiting to be discovered, still sitting in jars and drawers and old collections across the country, and you could be the next person to find one if you just take the time to look. Now let's talk about the visual impact of this error, because when you see a high-quality image of the 1984 doubled ear penny compared to a normal 1984 penny, the difference is striking. On a normal penny, Lincoln's ear has clean, crisp lines with a single outline and normal depth, but on the error variety, the ear looks thick, bold, almost cartoonish in how exaggerated it appears, with clear doubling visible in the outline, the inner curves, and particularly in the earlobe area. And once you've trained your eye to recognize this, you can scan through pennies incredibly quickly because the error literally jumps out at you. The Philadelphia Mint, where these 1984 error pennies were struck, has a long history of both incredible precision and occasional spectacular mistakes, and the 1984 doubled ear is one of those mistakes that has become legendary, not just because of its value, but because of how obvious it is, how clear the error appears, and how it managed to slip through what should have been multiple layers of quality control. And this raises fascinating questions about mint procedures, about how many errors actually make it into circulation that are never discovered, and about what other valuable mistakes might be hiding in plain sight in our pocket change. One aspect of these coins that doesn't get discussed enough is the psychological and emotional journey of discovering one. Imagine the moment you realize you're holding something worth potentially millions of dollars, your hands start shaking, you can barely breathe, you double-check and triple-check because you can't quite believe it's real, you're afraid to touch it too much, worried about damaging it, you start researching immediately, looking for confirmation, and then comes the agonizing. Wait while it's being authenticated and graded, weeks or even months of not knowing for certain if your life is about to change. And finally, when that certification comes back positive, when you see that official grade and attribution, it's like winning the lottery but better because you found it, you recognized it, your knowledge and persistence paid off. The 1984 doubled ear penny also represents an important lesson in the broader world of error coins. Not all errors are created equal. There are thousands of minor die varieties, small doubling here, a tiny repunched mint mark there, interesting but not particularly valuable, and then there are the major errors, the dramatic mistakes that create coins so visually distinctive and so rare that they become icons of numismatics, and the 1984 doubled ear falls squarely in that second category. It's one of those errors that defines an era, that becomes part of collecting folklore, that every serious Lincoln cent collector dreams of adding to their collection. Now, here's something that might surprise you. Despite the incredible values these coins command, there are still examples that surface for the first time every few years. Someone will submit a coin to a grading service having no idea what they have, or a coin will be discovered in an old collection being liquidated after an estate, and suddenly there's a new 1984 doubled ear on the market, even though it was struck 40+ years ago, and each time this happens, it creates a frenzy of bidding among collectors who might not get another chance to acquire one. The investment potential of ultra-rare error coins like the 1984 doubled ear is something that financial advisors and wealth managers are increasingly paying attention to. Unlike stocks or bonds, these coins can't be reproduced, can't be created in greater numbers, can't be devalued by printing more of them. They exist in a fixed population that only decreases over time as coins are lost, damaged, or destroyed, and as long as there are collectors who want them, which there always will be, the values can only trend upward in the long term, making them not just collectibles but potentially serious investment vehicles. Let me give you some practical advice if you want to search for this coin. Focus your efforts on unsearched collections, estate sales, coin rolls from banks that might have old stock, and definitely don't ignore those jars of pennies sitting in closets and attics. You want to examine every single 1984 penny you encounter, and I mean every one because missing just one could mean missing a fortune. Use at least 10x magnification, preferably 20x or stronger. Examine Lincoln's ear carefully. Compare it to reference images you can easily find online, and if you see anything that looks even remotely like doubling, set it aside for further examination. The grading standards for these coins are extremely precise. A coin graded MS65, gem uncirculated, will have sharp, crisp details, full mint luster, and only minor imperfections visible under magnification, perhaps a small contact mark or two, but nothing that distracts from the overall eye appeal. An MS66 or higher will be nearly perfect, and these are the grades that bring the highest prices. But don't discount lower grade examples because even a circulated 1984 doubled ear in fine or very fine condition is still an extremely valuable coin that most collectors would be thrilled to own. What I love about the story of the 1984 doubled ear penny is that it democratizes wealth in a way that few other opportunities do. You don't need a college degree, you don't need connections, you don't need startup capital, you just need knowledge, patience, and the willingness to actually look at your coins, and that knowledge is freely available. You can learn everything you need to know from videos, articles, forums, and books, often without spending a penny, and then it's just a matter of putting in the time to search. The historical context of 1984 adds another layer of interest to these coins. This was the year of the Los Angeles Olympics, the year Reagan ran for re-election, the year of the Macintosh computer launch. It was a pivotal year in American history, and somewhere in the midst of all that, The Philadelphia Mint accidentally created a die with doubled elements, struck thousands of error pennies, and released them into circulation, where they've been hiding ever since, waiting to be discovered. As we come to the end of this incredible journey through two of the most valuable Lincoln cents ever discovered, I want you to understand something fundamental. These coins exist, they're real, they're out there somewhere, and there's absolutely no reason why you couldn't be the next person to find one. All it takes is knowledge, which you now have, persistence, which I hope you'll develop, and a bit of luck, which favors those who are prepared. The 1973 D penny worth up to $6 million and the 1984 penny worth $2.40 million represent two of the most exciting opportunities in modern coin collecting. They prove that extraordinary treasures can hide in the most ordinary places, that the coins in your pocket or in your parents' old collection might be worth far more than their face value, and that paying attention to details, learning about errors and varieties, and taking the time to really examine your coins can literally change your life. So here's my challenge to you. Don't let this information just be entertainment. Don't just watch this video and move on with your life. Actually do something with what you've learned. Go through your pennies, check those old jars, visit estate sales, buy some coin rolls from your bank and start looking, because somewhere out there, in a jar, in a drawer, in a collection, maybe even in your pocket right this very moment, could be one of these incredible error coins waiting to transform your life. And wouldn't it be amazing if that person was you? Thank you so much for watching Error Coins Hub. If you found this information valuable, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more incredible coin stories, and drop a comment below telling me if you're going to start searching for these errors, because I love hearing from fellow coin enthusiasts. And remember, the next $1 million coin could be hiding in plain sight. You just have to know where to look.